Good afternoon and a warm welcome to our viewing and listening audience. I am Anisha Courage-Walcott, Senior Coordinator at the National Training Agency's Tobago office and the moderator for this afternoon's session. This is episode 20, or final episode for 2022, and today's session will delve into entrepreneurial self-efficacy among students. Employability skills are rapidly changing within industry so that future jobs will require tremendous adaptation. Similarly, narrowly focusing on one's skills can lead to jobs that are no longer relevant in the future. For many, entrepreneurship is believed as a solution to unemployment problems. However, for a person to act to be an entrepreneur, a term referred to as entrepreneurial self-efficacy is essential. An entrepreneurial mindset enhances a student's education by teaching them perseverance, tenacity, creativity, problem solving, and collaboration, so they can identify problems and find solutions. Research shows that an entrepreneurial mindset is highly sought after by employers and improves students' educational completion and achievement. It is also about learning the skills, reflecting on the behaviors, and challenging the norms to empower oneself to persevere in the face of challenges. With increased emphasis being placed on entrepreneurial thinking and acting in today's careers, we have witnessed growing research on entrepreneurial self-efficacy over the last 2 decades, which has also been one of the research focuses of our presenter today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Abede Mack, a Postdoctoral Fellow at McMaster University, DeGroote School of Business in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, who also lectures at the University of the West Indies Open Campus at the graduate and undergraduate levels. Dr. Mack's research interest lies in entrepreneurship and technical and vocational education and training. As an educator and a vocational practitioner for over 20 years, Dr. Mack has a deep-seated passion for developing people and contributing to the body of knowledge that will aid in the advancements of TVET. Dr. Mack's fervency towards knowledge has fashioned him into a scholar with a breadth of qualitative and quantitative research competencies. Dr. Mack, we now hand over to you and look forward to a very informative presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Today, the discussion will be centered upon entrepreneurial self-efficacy among students. As Anisha would have said, I have a deep-seated passion for skills training. Coming from a background of skills, being a plumber, and then work my way up in so many different stratas of life. I still have the passion for skills because oftentimes skills are overlooked. And just so what you guys, some people don't know what a postdoc is, even at university, sometimes they confuse it with a student. So my role at McMaster is to do research, and I have some teaching components of the fellowship. So the research that I'm going to talk about is a research that is on its way to publication. It was done between my supervisor and myself. So let me share my screen. So this research is, let me go here, right? So my discussion will be centered on, as I said before, entrepreneurial self-efficacy among students. I hope that we could have some questions at the end, so that way persons could share and ask things. So the research will be centered upon two streams of education, academic as well as TVET students. And so these are some of the learning outcomes that we hope to achieve from the talk today. Recognize the value of entrepreneurship and compare TVET and academic students. Oftentimes, TVET is overlooked and academic is held in high esteem. But we're going to compare today. We're going to analyze the role of entrepreneurial self-efficacy, and then we're going to look at some terms that is in the literature, but we developed, called social and experiential factors. And these factors, we're going to see how these factors could help students pursue entrepreneurial pursuits, or rather engage in entrepreneurial pursuits. So this is the content that we have here. So from introduction, we look at some theory, look at some hypotheses, look at the methods. Always good to look at the methods in terms of how the research was developed, and then results. And then we're going to look at some theoretical implications in the sense that how this research could benefit curriculum designers and persons in the field of education. All right, so definitely most of us would know the term TVET. It's technical vocation, education and training. And we all know is that form of education where it's skill oriented, it's practical based. It's mainly done in a lot of high schools. In industry, you have like we would look at persons who do construction, who build buildings and so forth, but it ranges in a whole lot of different areas, even in hospitality and tourism as well, and so many different ways, right? Entrepreneurship, we're going to look at some aspects of that. Entrepreneurship really is about creating business. It's about creating and growing business, right? On the term, we're going to look at Entrepreneurial Self-Efficacy, which was developed by McGee, and he's one of the leading scholars on the term Entrepreneurial Self-Efficacy. Basically, the term Entrepreneurial Self-Efficacy came from self-efficacy, which deals with belief and confidence. So McGee adopted the word entrepreneurial in it to look at the ability and the confidence rather of an individual that they have, that they can open their own business or they can launch a successful career in entrepreneurship. So that is McGee concept on entrepreneurial self-efficacy, right? So entrepreneurship, as we know, there's a lot of research and a lot of it is surrounding entrepreneurship, and it has known to be a favorable mechanism by most governments and policymakers around the world, because it has in itself the ability to produce vast amount of economic development. I was reading a case in a central country, an Asian country rather, and they had bad problems, they had economic challenges, and when they introduced entrepreneurship, the unemployment level decreased significantly. Right, and there are many other cases as well where focus is placed on entrepreneurship in many different countries, and we see a growth increase rather in GDP, right? And as a result of that, a lot of schools, institutions are teaching entrepreneurship, whether it could be in healthcare, business, or entrepreneurship takes place in several sectors. But there's a lot of discussion, a lot of emphasis on institutions all over the world. Europe have it, even here in North America, where a lot of emphasis is placed on infusing entrepreneurship education in the curriculum, right? Because many would see it as a tool to grow the economy, because the state cannot always provide employment. So there's need for persons or people to create employment. And then we look at the term self-efficacy. As I said before, self-efficacy is the belief that you can pursue an entrepreneurial path, that you can do it. It has been a leading factor in research for the past decade, over the past 10 years. You have seen a lot of research centered on entrepreneurial self-efficacy, because scholars found that studying this, it kind of show forth a lot more why people would pursue entrepreneurship and so forth. And they would say if entrepreneurial self-efficacy is improved, we could see greater growth for entrepreneurship. Because if someone believes that they can open a business, if they believe they can do something, the chances are it will be done faster than if they just have wishful thinking, right? So I said before, it's all about the belief in oneself that they possess the particular skills to fulfill this role. So while there has been an attempt to share a lot of research, our research tried to bridge the research gap, because there have been a lot of research regarding entrepreneurship in higher education, in academia. That's where the research goes, but there's little research focusing on technical vocation education. If you would do a search on the top leading journals, you would hardly see any research centered on skills training. You would see a lot of research centered on high school, even primary school, and mainly academia. But there's little research regarding TVET, and especially within a Caribbean context. So that's our attempt to bridge this gap. Right. So one of the things as well, there was little comparison between the two forms of education to compare academic students in a study to TVET students. It was mainly done to one group of students, or they might have just put everybody together and show that. But in this study, the emphasis is to compare the both groups, right? And also as well to see what factors or what things influence self-efficacy between the groups of students. So as I said before, the groups of students are TVET and academic students. So academic is the traditional higher education, people who do go university and so forth, as compared to people who go skills. They might go in a community college. That's what is done in North America. Or in Trinidad, we would have students attending various post-secondary institutions and so forth. And I will touch on the schools in a little bit, right? So we're going to look at some of the theory aspect of it in terms of how I was able to develop the hypotheses, right? So one of the things we looked at was social influences. So we look at things that what could influence somebody in an entrepreneurial way. And these are 4 influences here, and they are socially oriented: family and friends, relatives with family, friends, parents with higher education. It found to be an interesting component in this research. And extracurricular programs with an entrepreneurial focus. There's a lot of research being done. Again, it's mainly focused on academic students, but no focus on people with TVET or with a skill-based orientation. So generally, many leading scholars or researchers have shown that if a father is an entrepreneur, more likely his son would be an entrepreneur, right? And the research is showing that family and friends act as role models. They have a positive influence on really shaping a person's belief or encouraging them towards being an entrepreneur, right? And if the likelihood of somebody having a family member as a business owner, tendency more likely for them to become a business owner as well. And again, students as well, research has shown most of this information is, I will share the references at the end, but most of this is research and this is the theory. So students generally that are self-employed, that have self-employed family members, they tend to be optimistic about entrepreneurship, and that as well improve the entrepreneurial self-efficacy, right? And generally, anybody rely on the advice of friends and family, and that will take into consideration entrepreneurs as well. Just knowing someone as well will actually influence somebody towards entrepreneurship and propel that sort of attitude and behavior so that somebody might want to gravitate in terms of entrepreneurship. And generally, entrepreneurs choose friends. You could always lean on your friends to get advice. They could provide you with guidance, and also they may be able to help with resources. So these are some things that influence persons in the entrepreneurial way, right? So far we looked at the social influences. And in the social influences, that is going to go back quickly: family and friends, parents with higher education, and extracurricular focus. And then we have a lot of things dealing with social influencers acting as role models. So in the literature, a lot, you see a lot of family and friends, relatives, they actually are role models for entrepreneurs. And we look at experiential influencers. So in the experiential influences, you can see 2 things here: prior work experience and entrepreneurial experience. So for the experiential influencers, it showed that prior work experience actually helps somebody to develop positive entrepreneurial desires, or it leans towards improving entrepreneurial self-efficacy in an individual. Just knowing and previous knowledge as well improves, because if you were able to, let's say, own a business before, the business might fail. And there's a lot of I was reading a few papers and they were saying people who actually fail or stop being a business owner, they have a resilience to restart, because they have the experience. They might have stopped for social and other family economical reasons, but there is no deterrence in them wanting to go forward again. So just the fact that you did business before, it propels that kind of confidence in the individual to, let's say, you know what, I can do this. And this will have a rewarding influence on personality and ambitions. And again, prior work experience has also been factored in the research, where it shows this improved people's self-efficacy, right? So again, in general, work experience, prior work experience, or work experience influence entrepreneurial self-efficacy, as well as having some form of entrepreneur. So if you run a business or did run a business, it would actually definitely, you can see people being motivated or being influenced to pursue an entrepreneurial path. So these were the hypotheses, 7 hypotheses in all. The first one dealt with parents having a positive influence on the children, which will improve the entrepreneurial self-efficacy. Relatives, the same, and students that have friends that are entrepreneurs. So students that have friends that are entrepreneurs, these friends will positively influence their student counterparts towards opening a business. The fourth one, parents exposed to higher education will positively influence the entrepreneurial self-efficacy of students. Is a hypothesis we wanted to test. There was minimal literature on it, but there's something that was there and we decided to test it and it come up. So also as well, students' entrepreneurial self-efficacy, when it regards to extracurricular programs, this definitely we argued that this could influence entrepreneurial self-efficacy. Again, exposure, so these are the experiential factors now. So exposure to entrepreneurship will impact students, and full-time work experience, persons will see an improvement in the entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So these are some of the methods that was used. It always good to know the methods. So we had five TVET institutions. You would see them here: Automation Technology, Kensol, MIC, THTI, Trinidad, YTEP. These are the 5 TVET institutions that were used as part of the study. And then we had 2 academic institutions, UTT and the University of the West Indies. So, and the programs, they all covered. We didn't pass undergraduate. We tried to look at certificate, diplomas, and undergrad. We tried to go up to the undergraduate level in all institutions. So generally, from the sample, it was 419 responses, but we left out some responses because persons' data was missing from some fields, and we found that it was not, what's the word? It wasn't helping, with the data and so forth. So that was eliminated. So we resulted in having 151 academic students and 70 TVET students for analysis. So we used SurveyMonkey, and this study ran for about 8 months before we stopped it in April. It was a cross-sectional study, but cross-sectional studies is basically one point in time compared to long latitude studies. Some people do that where you start, let's say June, you collect data in June, and then you compare again in, let's say, December, right? So this was just one particular study at one point in time. You would see an assessment tool here. We use an instrument from Mobig. Mobig is a scholar from Denmark, a researcher, and he researched a lot on entrepreneurial self-efficacy. He developed a scale for entrepreneurial self-efficacy. A scale is just simply asking persons questions relating to entrepreneurial self-efficacy. We use that scale to use, and they develop a scale where they use this in Europe, and they were able to ask thousands of students, and it was tried and tested and so forth. So we use that as our scale to gather this data. And SPCS was used for data analysis. Right? So some of the measures we used were our dependent variable. So the dependent variable is the predicting variable. So basically, these other variables that underline parents' education, friends, self-employed, full-time work experience, these items here, we try to find out if it would predict somebody having a growth or increase or having a linear relationship, some sort of relationship with entrepreneurial self-efficacy. And that's what the dependent variable is to predict. We'll be trying to predict the outcome by using these other variables here. And it was more or less yes or no questions we asked for these variables, whereas full-time work experience, we use categories from 1 to 5, and 0 representing, so 5 categories, lowest category was 1, and so forth. So you can see that there. And also we use student self-employment experience, yes or no. And we ask the students, do you own or together with others operate a business today? Again, mother, father, and other relatives who are self-employed, we ask these questions, and we coded them as 0 and 1. Extracurricular focus, again, was used as part of we used some control variables. Gender was one. Most times gender always have some propensity towards business creation. So we wanted to use gender as one of those variables, and ages of students as well. So we kind of use students between 18 to 29 as our reference group. We wanted to check that group out as part of it. So results, so was predominantly female, a lot of times female. It's interesting that more the participants were female, but I remember doing a particular study and more participants were male. So it could be in terms of how the data was gathered, in terms of who responded. And again, the biggest group is 18 to 29, which is a really important group. And as a group, always policymakers should always look at, you know, the various policymakers, the various administrators in Trinidad should really look at this group. You know, there was research done. I can't remember the name. There's even now up to this day, if you look at the stats on ILO and you look at various organizations, IMF and so forth, this age group, 18 to 29, is the group that has the highest unemployment levels on a worldwide scale. In the Caribbean is even worse. I think the figures are past, it's high. It's like past 40% in the Caribbean. So it's a group of students that we should really look at in terms of entrepreneurship and encouraging that kind of thing among this particular group. So this group was 67%. So we have here some descriptive statistics. I want to just put this out here and I'm going to show the table on a Word document. Just showing it here to show what we're going to show on the regression models. And then we have hypothesis that was upheld or that was used. So I want to come out here a little bit. Just excuse me a second. Right. So let me see. That's now. All right. I'm trying to get out here. Right. So let me just share this quickly with you. I can share my screen here. Right. Right. So I want to show this. Right. So this table here gives a little snapshot in terms of the variables that we use. Same variables that I highlighted before. Just as give the standard deviation and the mean, it's just some statistical two methods I would use. So in terms of all the questions asked, this is the mean value that was derived. These numbers are the same variables here. Normally, each variable would always have one with itself because it will always correlate with itself the strongest. So we see ESC, that's entrepreneurial self-efficacy, definitely would have a 1, right? There's some correlation among certain variables. So, for example, friends that's self-employed have some correlation with entrepreneurial self-efficacy, same as full-time work experience, self-employment work experience, and also extracurricular focus on entrepreneurship. You would see some asterisks. These asterisks shows it's here, it's where it's correlated. It means there's a relationship between these particular variables. And you will see 2 asterisks. It means 0.05 is the standard value to use. But if it's 0.001, it just means it's at the 2 tail. It's a higher significant level, right? But all of them is 95% sure that this relationship exists. That is what it's showing, right? Now, look at the regression models. Now, if you look at the models, we compare the models. We have academic and TVET. In academic and TVET, we can see here this asterisk, which means a correlation exists. So it's P.05. It says in this model, parents that have a university degree, every time, so this has a correlation with the TVET students. It doesn't with the academic students. That's in the first model. And then we keep using, we go to friends, we see a correlation with friends with the TVET students, and there's no correlation with the academic students. We look at full-time work experience, we see there's a correlation among the academic students and not TVET students. We go to self-employment, we can see self-employment was positively correlated at 0.001 with academic students and not with technical vocational students. But actually, technical vocational students, there was a negative value, right? So normally, in these, when you look at these coefficients here, 0.23, what that simply means is every time there's an increase in this value, there'll be an increase in self-efficacy. Now, this minus value here. So every time there is an increase in this value, there's an decrease in self-efficacy. So which means these 2 values, self-employment for students, it's not correlated with TVET students. And the negative value mean the more they get self-employment, the more the students, the TVET students' self-efficacy will decrease. That is what that simply means, right? So these values, 0.23, it simply means that the closer the value is to 1, the greater the significance it is, right? So like 0.23, it's good because it's showing a correlation and so forth. So this value, our dependent variable is entrepreneurial self-efficacy. All of these here would be our predictors. These variables predicting the outcome or predicting entrepreneurial self-efficacy. And then I did another 3 models in total. So in model 2, again, we could see parents, university again was influential, and friends again was influential. Again, self-employment was correlated with the academic students, and again, a negative correlation for the TVET students in model 2. And in model 2, there was a negative relationship with full-time work experience. All right. And we do the 3rd model. So I use like a nested model in regression. It simply means you put in all your variables and you look to see which areas are correlated. Correlated mean which variables have any type of relationship. There's another method, stepwise, where if you put it in, some variables wouldn't show up. It will eliminate the ones that are not correlated, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to see which values are correlated, because we would not have been able to understand self-employment experience here. We would not be able to understand this value here, and so forth. So basically, the regression model simply shows which variables are correlated with each other. And extracurricular focus, when we run in model 3, we see a correlation with TVET students and not academic students. We can see the value here for academic students is 0.05, which is extremely low, right? Ages didn't show any correlation at all, neither gender in this study, right? So this is our regression model, and these were our, right? So this is as the parentheses, which indicate which values are correlated. And then, in terms of our findings, we can see here in this which values were upheld. So for example, the first hypothesis, there was no correlation. That value, that was rejected. That parents will improve self-efficacy, that was rejected. Relatives, that was rejected as well. But students that have friends, it was partially fulfilled, because it showed that TVET students, friends that are entrepreneurs, will influence them, right? Parents that have higher education, it showed value for TVET students and not academic students. And when it comes to extracurricular activities, the TVET students had a relationship with TVET students and not academics. And the last 2 variables, exposure to entrepreneurship, had a positive impact upon the academic students and not the vocational students. And then full-time work experience, you can see it was partially fulfilled with the academic students and not the technical vocational students. So I'll go back here. Let me go back here and share my screen. All right. Right. All right, slideshow. Give me a second. I'm just coming back to my slide. I found the Microsoft Word document was a little bit better. Right. So we now on. So basically, from our study, we were able to find some particular relationships, some linear relationships between the academic students and vocational students with particular variables or certain things to predict the outcome of entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So when we look at the first theoretical implication, we could see that both groups of students are influenced by experiential or experiences and social factors based on the data we get. So things like role models were very significant for the TVET students. Sorry, we could see TVET students are stimulated. Entrepreneurial self-efficacy is increased when role models are introduced, right? So this tells us that in terms of entrepreneurship education or entrepreneurship training, we ought to put training across depending on the particular group and not just a blanket type of training for any group of students. Again, Friends was a role model and it served as a social influencer. And this particular one, parents with higher education, I found it to be very interesting. Parents that have higher education. So in this study, it showed that they positively influence the entrepreneurial self-efficacy of TVET students. And again, extracurricular focus on entrepreneurship. It's so good with TVET students. And for my little time, I can see why. Because most times TVET students are generally doing things like these all the time and doing practical work. So it will have some sort of influence. right? Full-time work experience, on the other hand, improve the self-efficacy of the academic students, but not the skilled trade students. All right. Students that pursue higher education. Now, one of the things for this, generally, and this is some of the implications here, or things to note, is that students who involve in academia need experiences outside the classroom. This now will help them to build tacit knowledge, that experiential knowledge, that can help them improve their self-efficacy. On the other hand, TVET students are already doing practical stuff. They do practice 3-4 times days a week in the high school. Even at these other programs, they have a lot of practical they would do. Sometimes TVET give them role plays, role scenarios where they actually have to interface with particular individuals who act as customers. So that type of experience for TVET students, they already kind of have it, whether it be informal or formally, whereby the academic students, they don't have those experiences. They don't have those type of things. So they need these kind of scenarios to help build the entrepreneurial self-efficacy. And again, TVET students are stimulated by social interactions. They are stimulated by that social dynamic. That's what TVET students are more geared towards. Whereas the academic students, they're more experiential. They're more focused on experiences to grow self-efficacy. So when we ask, those are the things that will grow self-efficacy among the academic students. And so an academic student may generally want to pursue a corporate role or focus on a corporate career because most of the degrees are geared towards that. So that's why we might have argued that difference. But also, again, it comes back to show that depending on schooling, we should offer curriculum based on the type of student, right? So these are some points to end off with. Based on the research, we could see that depending on the group of students, we really need, what's the word, interventions. Because generally, entrepreneurship education, in some schools, there's no entrepreneurial education. Research done in 2018, yes, when I did my doctorate, at the time, there were no entrepreneurial education in most of the vocational institutions. And even you would do research in some of the academic institutions, there was an absence of that as well. So in moving forward, what should happen is entrepreneurial education should be done in a way where it benefits a particular group of students, right? So, and depending on the curriculum being adopted, depending on what is being offered, these factors should be considered when offering particular programs, right? And this particular research provides a framework for educators. So that's it. I think I've come to the end here. And just some limitations to consider. I mean, all studies have some form of limitations. Our results cannot infer causal or causation, right? It should be causation relationships, meaning it's an association. There's a linear relationship, but not a cause. We can't say because a parent university degree that caused somebody to improve self-efficacy. No, we're not saying that. We're saying that education from the parent or the friends that have a relationship with their TVET students, that influence there's a relationship, there's something happening there. That's what we argued. And again, long latitude studies sometimes, some argue that they provide deeper insight sometimes because we could see a pattern, we could see a trend with it, whereby in cross-sectional studies, we're not able to see that change if things could change, right? And as I said, more data could have emanated from the TVET, especially the TVET group of students, to understand the subjects a bit better. So I would say these are some of the limitations of this study. And further research can be done. Is something that I would definitely want to explore in the future. More on role models when regards to even TVET students pursuing a vocational path and so forth. So these are some of the, and then it was just, it was limited to these particular institutions. So I hope that the information given was able to provide a sort of snapshot, a sort of indication in terms of some ideas towards come off here. Right. So that's the end of our session. I hope that what was shared sort of helped. Questions are available because I wanted to kind of have some questions because I know some of the concept might be new to folks and persons might have some questions and so forth. So I'll now hand over to Anisha.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mack, for sharing your research with us and providing us with a deeper understanding of entrepreneurial self-efficacy, which I believe needs to get more attention in TVET curriculum development. Based on your presentation, we can see that it's no longer just about it's just not enough for students to develop their entrepreneurial hard skills, but focus should also be placed on the psychological aspect of entrepreneurship and paying attention to those factors that would influence the entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So at this time, we now move into a question and answer segment where you, members of the audience, can participate. We will attempt to address as many questions as the remaining time will allow. Right, so I'll just give me a second while I go over to our feed to see what questions we have in store. Okay, well, at this time, I have a question for you, Dr. Mark, in terms of when you would have given us the topic in terms of entrepreneurial self-efficacy, I went online to look to do my own research as well, and some stuff came up with entrepreneurial self-efficacy and how it influences innovation. How would you say this that entrepreneurial self-efficacy influences innovation among TVET students?
Um, I think it would, because it would give students that because it's factors that influence that grow the entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So somebody wouldn't just have that desire for a business. It would be on these social factors that we spoke to. It would be on various things. But I think it would, because if somebody has that passion for business, I think it would develop a certain level of innovativeness. And generally, on the whole, entrepreneurship, in order to survive, innovativeness has to take place, because innovation might not just be making a new product, but innovation would be just modifying services. So it could just be simply, for example, a plumber might have a particular business, and innovation for him might be in terms of how he build customers, in terms of how he spend more time actually after a simple thing like when I was a plumber, when I worked back home, one of the things I used to always do, I remember my teacher saying, always clean up after you finish. And that was my strategy. I would leave the house, I would leave the place in a better state and that could be innovativeness, in the sense that you're adapting your services to reach busy persons or different things like that. So innovation is not necessarily, in my understanding, coming up with a new idea, because I believe there's nothing new under the sun, but people adapt and they improve, and for me, one of the greatest innovation for entrepreneurs, especially TVET entrepreneurs, is service in Trinidad, because people have a lot of issues with persons in skills, and they kind of already have the stigma attached. They believe that persons shouldn't get that kind of money. It's different in North America. In North America, people are paid handsomely for TVET. So, for example, my salary as a postdoc scholar might be the same salary as for plumbers in some, like an experienced plumber with 5 years experience. Somebody with a PhD getting the same salary as a plumber. So they take skills serious, right? In terms of people getting paid for it. In Trinidad, that might be a bit different. So for Trinidadians, for me and Caribbean on the whole, that level of innovative has to come from the service side, in terms of how we approve our processes and even our service delivery.
I fully agree with you. Service, and I believe we really need to pay more attention to that service component of in any skill or any field. That service aspect, that customer service aspect, is critical. I don't see any more questions at this time, but I know sometimes, like later on, the audience, we leave when they do review the feed, they have the opportunity to submit questions to us, which I would um, provide the information for later on.
Okay.
Oh, all right. But at this time, Dr. Mark, we have come to the end of this webinar. And firstly, we wish to express our appreciation to you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your research and knowledge with us. I think we can all agree that entrepreneurial self-efficacy is a key component in improving entrepreneurial status and performance among students. Thank you to all those viewing and listening live. Please be reminded that you can view this presentation and our previous webinars on NTA's YouTube channel. We also encourage you to subscribe to our channel and like and share these webinars. If you wish to send us feedback or suggestions for other webinars, send us an email at webinar, that's WEBINAR, at ntatt.org. As we close off this year with our 20th webinar, such a milestone for us, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the management and staff of the National Training Agency to wish you and your families a Merry Christmas and a bright and prosperous 2023. I am Anisha Currit-Walcott, reminding you to look out for further communications from our team for a copy of this session's recording. Do have a great afternoon and an enjoyable weekend.